A coach will need three types of insurance. The public liability insurance keeps you covered in case of injury to players in training or game and covers your property or your kit in case of damage or if your equipment is stolen. This is important for a hockey coach because it's quite a dangerous sport and there is a high risk of injury in the game, and therefore the coach needs to avoid being sued by players' parents if their child suffers a bad injury like a broken bone. This type of insurance would also be important for a football coach because they have lots of equipment like footballs, cones, poles that adds up to a lot of money. So if the football coach lost any equipment, they would be covered and get the money back from their insurance. The employer's liability insurance is for companies like the Russell Martin Academy who run coaching courses. This insurance is to cover the employers in the company. Therefore, if any injuries were to happen during the training sessions at the Russell Martin Academy, then the coaches wouldn't be sued by any of the parents. Finally, the business equipment insurance covers just loss or damage of equipment. This type of insurance would be important for a polo coach because there's lots of expensive equipment like the saddles, sticks, and even the horses. So if any of it was stolen, the polo coach wouldn't lose loads of money on the equipment because they would be covered. In 2015, £1,700 worth of cricket equipment was stolen from the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. It is important for all coaches to have insurance in case of injury that wasn't meant to happen, but insurance prices are going to be higher for dangerous sports like hockey and rugby rather than golf or tennis because injuries are more likely to happen in those sports. Health and safety. Coach must also think about the health and safety responsibilities that they have. Certain activities have a much higher risk. Javelin, hockey, and gymnastics are a lot more dangerous than football and golf. A rugby coach must check the pitch is safe to play on before they train and that there's no glass or anything on the pitch. They must also teach their players how to tackle technically right to stop themselves and other players from getting injured. There must be a first aider present at the game and a first aid kit at training, and a first aider at the game and training as well, and a risk assessment carried out before every session. Whereas in cricket, the coach must make sure that the batsman has all the right batting protection on: pads, gloves, helmet, pad, thigh pad, anything like that. But in golf, there isn't many health and safety checks needed as it is a very safe sport, and there is no protective gear needed. There are many aspects of health and safety that the coach would have to think about when planning a session. A boxing coach would have to think about age and ability because if two boxers fight who aren't as good as the other one and a lot smaller, then they could get seriously hurt. Sports like cricket will need enough space to play safely so that the ball isn't too close to the batsman. And if there are too many players in the basketball sessions, then players will run into each other and get injured. There should always be a first aid kit on the side of a pitch in any sport, and a volleyball coach should carry out a risk assessment before training to check there's no dangers, as often volleyball players are running around without looking down where they're going, so if there's any cones or anything, that could be a trip hazard. Before a 100-meter sprinters training session, they should do a warm-up to make sure they don't pull a muscle and that they get their heartbeat up quickly and oxygen to the muscles. A football coach must check that none of the players are wearing any jewellery during the sessions to avoid any injuries, and in every club there should be an emergency action plan which tells all coaches and staff what to do if there's an emergency like a serious injury. There should also be constant evaluation and contingency plans and cool downs to stop players getting muscle injuries after matches or training. After training, coaches should think about the session and whether it was safe, and if there are any problems that they haven't thought about before that happened in the session, they should add it to the safety plan, an emergency action plan to stop it happening again, or so coaches know what to do if it does happen again. You would expect all coaches to show a high level of professional conduct, but if a coach is paid, then you would expect a lot higher professional conduct than someone who is doing it on a voluntary basis. A coach would be expected to be on time, prepare their sessions before, dress appropriately, safety checks, make sure that players are behaving safely, use the right words when they're talking to their players, know their sport so they don't confuse the players, have like a good distance between them and the players, and interact rightly. So let the players play the game, not just give them loads of words that they won't remember. Let them learn by playing. For example, a rugby coach would need to wear the right boots and wear a gum shield, so that his players also wear their gum shield and the correct boots. A football coach would need to plan their training session days before, so that the players are constantly moving and they aren't standing still while the coach sets drills up. A football coach would also have to check there's no glass or anything dangerous in the pitch before they start training. In cricket, there's lots of technical language that a coach would have to use and make sure his players understand it. However, in something more simple like football, the language is quite simple to understand. In volleyball, it's important the coach keeps a good distance from players in training, because it's quite a fast sport, and if you keep stopping players in between points, if they're playing in a match situation, then they may lose momentum, and also they're running around and hitting the ball quite hard, so you want to get in the way and cause someone to trip up and get injured. And also the players might become frustrated if the coach keeps stopping and starting their training. They might just want to learn by playing. There are many legal obligations that a coach needs to fulfill. The types of abuse every coach should look out for are neglect. So, for example, having no shin pads or water every week in football training and ripped kit. Emotional abuse, so parents constantly shouting at children in training or games for doing the wrong thing. Physical, so any bruises or unusual marks you spot on a child. And sexual, so that would most likely come if they tell you about it. Barry Bennell is an example of someone who didn't follow the legal obligations of a coach and was convicted of 43 counts of sexual abuse and used his power as a coach to take advantage of the children. But he isn't the only one. The National Police Chiefs Council claimed that a significant number of calls they'd heard on phone calls from them that they had experienced child abuse from coaches in the past. Also, in December 2016, it came out that 350 children have reported that they were victims of sexual abuse in British football clubs, but this number is likely to be much higher, as many children are too horrified, or adults now are too horrified to relive the past and come out in the open about what happened. The Child Protection Act 2004 says that it is the responsibility of all agencies working with children and young people to work together and adopt a multi-agency approach when offering services. So therefore it is important that everyone works together as adults and to look after children and make sure none of these types of abuse are happening and that they all report it straight away. Most netball clubs will have a safeguarding policy in place which will tell coaches what to do if there is an incident, like if child abuse is reported, or if they spot child abuse, where they go, who they tell. Coaches shouldn't use their personal vehicles to transport a rugby team to venues, and if they are too young or if there's too many players for one coach to handle, they need another adult, whether this is another coach or parent or guardian. For example, if a school rugby team of 17 is going in a 16-person minibus, and the coach might have to drop another player and only take 16, as they shouldn't take one child themselves in their own personal vehicle. The driver of the minibus must also be qualified and insured. If a football coach is told something serious about abuse, or if they spot something that looks wrong, for example, a confident child may start to become very shy, they should tell the club welfare officer, which is found in every chartered youth football club. It was found from an FA project in 2003 that many FA staff were bullied into not talking about child sexual abuse cases. And this project was ended 3 months earlier when all the funding was removed and the FA shut it down, which shows that many people were scared to talk, were probably pushed into not saying anything because of the seriousness of it, and they might have become scared because it is a horrific thing for someone to relive from their childhood. Furthermore, a cricket coach must be level 1 coaching qualified with safeguarding and first aid qualification, and anyone helping out must be DBS checked so they can work with children. The cricket coach shouldn't overwork his players to cause them to become extremely tired or exhausted, and they should check for any medical problems like asthma. If the player has asthma, then they need to have their inhaler on them, else they aren't able to take part in the session.